Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Burn the Rulebook podcast. This is the podcast where we break down everything you were never taught about menopause, mental health, and relationships one truth at a time. I'm Rachel Boyle, a licensed couples therapist, sex therapist, and certified menopause specialist. This podcast helps you understand what is actually happening to your body, mind, and relationships, and gives you real tools to move through life with clarity, calm, and connection. Let's get started. Welcome back. Today we're talking about perimenopause and people-pleasing. When you're done saying yes to everything. Okay, today's episode is going to hit home if you've ever found yourself feeling guilty for saying no, or if you've ever found yourself putting other people's needs ahead of your own, or ever felt like something has shifted in midlife and you're no longer willing to go along with it. And here's what you're going to learn today. Why so many women are conditioned to people please and how cultural and social norms have shaped that role. What changes in perimenopause that makes people pleasing suddenly unbearable, and 5 real-world steps to start reclaiming your voice, time, and your boundaries. And make sure you stick around to the end. I'll be sharing one powerful mindset shift that can help you stop apologizing for having needs and start honoring them instead. Okay, so today we're diving into something I see over and over in my practice, and that is people-pleasing. More specifically, how perimenopause becomes the moment when so many women finally start to question the lifelong habit of putting everyone else first. So first off, we're going to start talking about why women are taught to people-please. People-pleasing isn't a personality trait. It's a survival strategy that many women learn early on in life. So from the time that we're little girls, we get praised for being agreeable, helpful, and selfless. We're taught that being a good girl means making others comfortable and suppressing our own needs and putting others first. We're not just taught this in the homes we grew up in, but we're also taught it in school. We're taught it in our social circles, and it comes to us in movies and books and also from the media. Now, this conditioning is rooted in patriarchal systems that have long valued women for their service and not for their self-authority or their own autonomy. So by the time we reach adulthood, people-pleasing can feel like second nature. But it comes at a cost, and that cost can be burnout, resentment, a feeling of loss of identity, and oftentimes by the time we hit perimenopause, full-blown emotional exhaustion. So why is it that perimenopause is the breaking point? Well, it seems like everything comes to a head during perimenopause, and part of it is because of the declining estrogen, which impacts our brain's ability to buffer stress and regulate mood and keep the peace at all costs. The polite, patient, always available version of you starts to fade. And underneath is someone who's sometimes frustrated, tired, overstimulated, and no longer willing to ignore her own needs. And that shift doesn't necessarily have to be a problem. It can be an invitation. And midlife cracks open old conditioning and asks, at least the ask is on offer, what do I want to do now? And for many women, this is the first time they truly feel the internal pull to stop performing and to start honoring their truth. So let's talk about what people-pleasing costs you. People-pleasing comes at a cost. Being kind all the time comes from a place, a lot of times, from fear. That would be fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being selfish or being seen as difficult or too much. And women get this messaging a lot in society that they can be too difficult or too much. And over time, those fears of being seen that way becomes a habit. It becomes a pattern. And so you might find yourself saying yes when really you don't want to. You start to prioritize other people until there's nothing left of you. And this can happen, especially when women have children. They prioritize their children and their partners over themselves. So eventually you get disconnected from yourself and actually what brings you joy and pleasure in your own life. And this can manifest as anxiety, depression, resentment in your relationships, that feeling of being emotionally numb. And some people even have physical symptoms of fatigue and overwhelm. So in perimenopause, when your emotional bandwidth is already really low, the cost of this habit of people pleasing just becomes too high to ignore. So now we're going to start to talk about how to reclaim yourself. How do you break this habit of people pleasing? So there's 5 simple steps that are simple, but they're powerful. The first one is to pause before saying yes. So if someone says, hey, can you volunteer at school or at the PTO? Or can you help me move this weekend? I want you to start to pause and say, let me think about this. That's going to give you some buffer. And during that buffer, you're going to have time to check in with yourself before you automatically agree. So what's happening with this exercise is you're going to stop the automatic yes. And to stop the automatic yes, the first thing is to start realizing when you're saying yes. And that requires you to be intentional of the words that you're saying. So I want you to say, let me check and see if that'll work with my schedule. Number 2, name what you want. Even if you don't say it out loud, start noticing your own preferences. What do you want for dinner? How do you want to spend your weekend? And that's going to help connect you with your internal voice of what actually matters to you. The third step is to practice disappointing people. And this one is hard. It's really hard, you guys, but it's essential because in life, you're going to disappoint others. And learning to tolerate the uncomfortability and the distress of disappointing another person is what is actually going to give you freedom. Because you can still disappoint others and be a good person. Their discomfort does not mean that you did something wrong. In fact, I tell people if you say no or you set a boundary and the other person is upset by that boundary that you just set, it's because they were benefiting from you not having a boundary, right? So if another person gets upset at your boundary setting, that's a them issue, not a you issue. Number 4, I want you to set your boundaries out loud. Use clear, kind statements like, I won't be able to make that, or that doesn't work for me. You don't have to over-explain. Short and direct is powerful. Sometimes when people have, been people-pleasing throughout their life, they don't want to come out with a direct, that won't work for me. They say something a little softer of, oh, I'd really like to. But then that's ambiguous because I'd really like to can lead someone to think that you're going to, rather than just saying that doesn't work for me or I won't be able to. Next, start developing friendships of women who respect your boundaries. Community matters. Spend time with people who celebrate your no and who value your growth and who are doing this work too. And here's the powerful mindset shift I mentioned at the beginning of this episode. You can still disappoint others and be a good person. Okay, let me say that again. Someone else's discomfort does not mean you did something wrong. It may just mean you finally did something right for you. And this shift is the beginning of stepping out of guilt and into self-respect. It's the doorway to boundaries and to building a life that feels more honest, more free, and more aligned with who you really are. Now, if you're feeling nervous about starting some of these new exercises, I want you to start with something really small whenever you say no or whenever you set a boundary. Start with something that doesn't feel completely overwhelming. It may be something like saying, you know what, I'm going to speak up for myself with what I want to eat for dinner. Or it may be something like, no, I can't help with this chore right now. Maybe I can help with it later. So just start with something small that feels like it's a little stretch, but not something that's going to overwhelm you. And the more of these small boundaries that you set, then the easier it is to set really big boundaries.
Thanks for spending time with me today. I hope you found something helpful, validating, or just a little more human in our conversation. Remember, while I'm a licensed therapist, I'm not your therapist, and I'm not a medical doctor. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute medical or mental health advice. For personalized care, please consult with a licensed healthcare provider or mental health professional trained in the area you're seeking support. You deserve expert guidance that's tailored just for you.